I think we were waiting for one more person to join, but today's list will be taught by Anj, Jimmy, and Kai, and they will be teaching you about introduction to economics. So,
All right, I think we should get started. Hello everyone, I'm Ansh Vasani, and I'm going to be presenting this with Jimmy Wei and Kai Collins.
Yeah, so here's a rough agenda. Kai's gonna be joining us in a couple of minutes, but here's just a rough agenda of what we're gonna be doing today. We're gonna kind of talk about what is economics. We'll kind of illustrate it with some of the big questions that you see in economics. Then we'll talk about some key concepts. So that means, wants versus needs. What does it mean to want versus what does it mean to need? We'll talk about scarcity. We'll talk about opportunity cost, comparative advantage. And then finally, we'll kind of talk about how economics is important in the real world, in your daily life, and how you can use it in your daily life. And finally, we'll end it by reviewing some of these concepts a little bit. So, what are some of the big questions in economics? Well, why are prices set differently for the same items on different days? Why is it that after, a year, the cost of something at the grocery store might be a bit more expensive? Why are some things getting more expensive? Why are some things getting less expensive? Why do countries decide what to bring in? So, and what to ship out? So, what to export and what to import? Economics is the study of what to buy with a limited amount of money, and is the study of understanding all these different questions.
All right, so let's start with a story. So imagine you have only one single coin, and that coin can only get you one single item at a store. And so you go to the store and you see a nice, cold, refreshing bottle of juice, which you really enjoy. You also see a football, right? And you really want both of these items, but you can only choose to buy one. So how do you decide between these two? Next slide. So that moment of deciding between juice and a football, that's an economic decision because it's made based on scarcity. So economics isn't all about boring charts or difficult math. It's about the choices we make every single day.
Wait, there might be an
Hello.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah, please. You are to slow down a bit because they say they don't understand what you're saying and you are
Okay.
moving too fast. So please, you are to slow down a bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry about
All
that.
right. Okay.
All right. Let's just go back to, I guess, the big questions. We'll slow it down a bit. Uh, so again, what are some of the big questions that economics answers? So economics is how we decide, and how it is decided, the prices of different things on different days. So why do prices change from day to day? Economics helps answer that. It helps answer why things are expensive, why things are cheap. Um, and it also helps decide how much of something you will have, whether it be in your country, even in your home. that's
Yeah.
based on economics. So economics is a study economics is a study of what to do with a limited amount of money and resources. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so to sort of give an example of economics in real life, let's start with the story. So you go to the store with one single coin, and with that coin, you can only get one single item at this store. So you have two options. You can get a bottle of juice, or you can get a new football. And so you really want both items, but your coin can only buy one. And that's the key of what economics is. Next slide. And so when you make that choice to either get the juice or the football, you're doing economics. So it's not about charts or math. It's about these choices that you make on how to spend your money and resources. Slide.
So one of the key differences in economics is what is the difference between a want and a need? So what are some of the things you want? Well, maybe you want video games. Maybe you want, a soccer ball. Maybe you want ice cream. These are things that you want. But do you need them to survive? Do you need them to live? No. So what do you need? You need clothing, you need basic food, you need water, you need a place to live. So these are differences between wants and needs. So essentially, wants are the things that you want that if you had them, you'd be very happy, but it's not necessary to survive. But a need is something that is necessary to survive. So of course, a need is more important. So yeah, here we kind of go more specifically into what are needs. Needs are things we absolutely must have to survive. If we don't have these needs, we are not going to live. I mean, we might not even survive, but we're definitely not going to live a healthy life. So, what do people need? Food to give our bodies energy, clean water to drink and stay healthy, a safe home to protect us from, you know, potentially dangerous weather, and clothes to keep us warm and protected. What are wants? Well, wants are all of the extra things we want the extra things we would like to make our life happier and to make our life more interesting. So we don't need them to survive, but it's definitely nice to have them. So it can be anything from a chocolate bar to like a luxury car. Like you don't need a luxury car, but it might make you happy if you have it. Or just like if you get a chocolate bar from the store, you don't need it, but it'll make you happy if you have it. Same with, like a TV or a video game controller. These are all things you want. You do not need these things. So, what is this big problem, the first big problem in economics that we're going to talk about? We cannot have everything. As much as we'd want to, we can't have everything in the world. Even if you want to have, a million chocolate bars, you can't have that because there's not enough. And there's only so many chocolate bars in the world. And there's a lot of people in the world. So we can't have everything. And economics is all about how you decide between, this lack of things, this um not being able to have everything, and the amount of money we have and resources we have. All right, Ant, you want to go into this part?
Yeah. So this big problem in economic terms is called scarcity. So it's the idea that we can't have everything that we want to get because our resources, and usually money, is limited. And so there are a couple of things that we have that are limited besides money. We have limited time because there's only a certain amount of hours in a day. We can't go to all the places we want to get all the things we want. And we have limited stuff. So for example, the store might only have 5 bottles of juice, or farmers can only grow a certain amount of food, and factories can only build a certain amount of cars. So that's why we have scarcity, which is a big problem in economics. Next slide. And so one example of this could be imagine there's a whole city with only one single fruit tree, and everyone in the town wants a piece of fruit from that tree. So we would say that there's a scarcity of fruit in that city. And how do we decide who gets fruit and who does not get fruit? That's a problem that economics would solve. Next slide. Kai, if you want to go.
Hi everyone, I'm Kai. Sorry I just joined. I was a little late. So one of the problems we have here is choices and opportunity costs. Because of scarcity, which Ansh just explained, we have limited time and money. So we're forced to make choices every single day. Every choice you make is also a trade-off, meaning that you get one thing, but you have to give up something else. For instance, if you want to go to bed early, one trade-off could be is that you didn't finish all your homework. So what is opportunity cost? Opportunity cost and trade-off are kind of the same thing, but it's basically the next best thing that you didn't choose, right? So let's go back to our first choice. If you chose or if you used your coin to buy juice, um, you know, your opportunity you gave up that coin to get the juice, so that was your trade-off. And in another example, your opportunity cost with football, you gave up the fun of playing with the ball so you could have the juice. So this is another example of opportunity cost. It's the decision of if you want to play or read. For instance, if you have 1 hour free time, you can either exercise outside or read a book, right? If you choose to go outside, your opportunity cost is reading the book because you're trading off the book. You gave up the knowledge you might have gained from it to instead improve your physical fitness or go outside.
Okay, so at
Even
this
big,
point, sorry. Do you
do
guys
you
have
want to do
any
this one?
questions for us? Yeah. If you guys have any questions for us, feel free to, ask them.
Okay. So even big companies have opportunity costs. So you might just think very wealthy people and groups can have everything, but they also face opportunity costs. For instance, if a sporting goods company spends money to build a new football factory, their opportunity cost might be not being able to fully build a factory that makes badminton rackets that year. So choices and trade-offs never end, no matter how much money is involved.
Yeah, and just kind of adding on to this point, it's not just big companies, it can also be countries, countries of opportunity costs. So if a country, I think their screen is frozen. Um,
Yeah, I think we need to wait it out a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's back. Yeah.
okay, I think yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of adding on, it's not just big companies who have an opportunity cost. It's also it's also countries. So a country can have, very good soil, very, very fertile soil. They can grow a lot of they can grow a lot of fruits and vegetables. So their opportunity cost for producing fruits and vegetables in comparison, and like compared to um if they, I don't know, produced bicycles is definitely going to be a lot lower because they have the country is equipped to farm the vegetables. They have good soil, they have good climate, but they don't have the factories to build bicycles. So obviously the opportunity cost to build a bicycle is going to be very, very high because they're sacrificing so much, so many vegetables and fruits. But the opportunity costs for farming and producing fruits and vegetables is going to be much lower, as that's what their climate and their environment is made for. So opportunity costs apply to not just not just, me and you, but they apply to companies and even countries. So we're going to a different concept now. Also, feel free to ask any questions at any point. You can always interrupt us whenever you'd like. But we'll go into comparative advantage, which is a bit of a different concept. It's still very similar to opportunity cost. So, comparative advantage is when a country, it's usually a country, but it can be also anything, but a country specializes in one area. So, kind of when I was talking about a country who has very, you know, fertile soil, they can produce a lot of fruits and vegetables. So in that case, they specialize in fruits and vegetables and farming. So when a country specializes in one area, it is called a comparative advantage. So, for example, if one country can produce 500 t-shirts, but another country, um, sorry, if a country can produce up to 500 t-shirts and they can produce up to 200 socks, but a different country can produce up to 100 t-shirts or up to 600 socks, obviously the first country is very good at producing t-shirts, but not very good at producing socks. But then with the other country, they're very good at producing socks and not t-shirts. So in this case, the first country has a comparative advantage in producing t-shirts compared to socks, and the other country has a comparative advantage in producing socks compared to t-shirts. So how a nation should decide, so what should each nation specialize in? What might they wanna import slash export? So based on comparative advantage, it's best for the first country to specialize in and export extra t-shirts while importing the socks they need. On the other hand, the other country would be the other way around. Um, and they would be specializing in exporting socks instead of t-shirts because they're simply just much better at producing socks than t-shirts.
Yeah, so what about Ghana's economy? So Ghana has a GDP of $82.83 billion dollars. And GDP is basically just like a report card for a country's economy. And it just shows how much value the country creates per year. Right here, I have it's the total value of all the goods and services a country makes in 1 year. And it shows how big or strong a country's economy is. Ghana's GDP might be smaller compared to big countries like the US or China, but it's still very important because it tells how much growth and opportunity is happening there. And also, what makes Ghana unique is what goes into that GDP number, right? Ghana makes a lot of gold, oil, and cocoa, and also farming plays a big role. So, knowing this just helps us understand how Ghana's economy contributes on a global scale, and why trade is so important for the country's future.
All right,
So,
so
you got
moving
this.
on. Yeah. If you're interested in economics, the profession in that case would be being an economist. And so, who is an economist? So, these are the people who study all these big problems and choices that we talked about, and the concepts like comparative advantage and opportunity cost. And so, you can think of them in two ways. Firstly, they're a detective in that they investigate the choices that people, businesses, and countries make, and they try to learn more about what influences and motivates these choices. And then they're a doctor, and that they check the health of a country's money supply and suggest ways to make it stronger. So they help countries and companies make these big choices and decisions. Next slide. And so, like I said, they try to find answers in these very important questions that affect all of us. And some examples of these questions are, why did the price of bread go up this year? How can we create more jobs so people can earn more money for their families? How can we help farmers earn more money from the crops they grow? And how can our country trade with other countries to get things we don't make locally, like cereal or petrol? Next slide. And so Economists don't just sit in offices with charts. They have some very interesting jobs. Some at different levels. Some advise presidents and prime ministers of countries, and some make investment choices in the millions of dollars, and some help small companies grow into giant world famous businesses. Kai, if you want to continue from here.
So yeah, economics is everywhere. Once you start looking around, you'll see economics happening all around you every day. It's in the store, at your home, and even your school. Economics is also at the market. When you go to the market or store, you see economics in action, right? The seller selling you whatever you're buying decides on a price for that. Buyers like you, who's buying the product, they look at the price and decide if they'll buy it or walk away, right? That's basically deciding if something costs too much and you have enough money for it or you don't. And that's the heart of a market economy. So there's also economics in savings, right? If you save money, you have a piggy bank or a savings box, you're also making a powerful economic choice. You're choosing to give up small wants today so you can purchase a bigger need or want in the future, right? You're saving your money for something you want to buy in the future rather than just spending it today. So there's also economics in jobs. Why do people even go to work, right? On a very fundamental level, they try to earn an income. They trade their time, skills. They trade their time and skills for money, and they use that money to pay for the family's needs and wants, right? Needs including food, rent, shelter, and wants including a vacation or a holiday, for instance. And this is also key to the economic cycle.
Yeah, so I'll go into this part. Um, so how does economics empower you? Why is economics important for you? Um, Economics isn't just a school subject. I mean, like we said before, like with some of these concepts, like, wants versus needs, stuff like that. Economics is a tool that we use literally every single day. It's how you decide, okay, if I'm at the grocery store today, let's say pork prices are extremely high and chicken prices are lower, then you're going to buy the chicken. You're going to buy chicken instead because the economics say that you probably should do that specific day. So it's a tool we use literally every single day, whether we know it or not. Like when you're weighing, pros and cons, like is this thing worth it? Do I need this? Do I want this? These are important things. And if you understand it, it's going to help you make smarter choices for the rest of your life. Um, Understanding economics is a quote from a famous economist. Understanding economics can help you make better decisions and lead to a happier life. Economics is also important for starting a business. I mean, it can be a business of any size. Any business in the world uses economics constantly. Um, it could be Apple, it could be ExxonMobil, it could be any firm in the world. It could be your local bakery. It could be your local butcher shop. It's anything. Everyone uses economics, um, to set prices. How do you decide how to set your prices? How do you decide are you gonna charge $5 for bread or $10 for bread? You use economics to do that. Use economics to decide, okay, how do you manage your money? How do you make money? How do you make profit? How do you decide, okay, is this too expensive? Am I paying this person too much? Things like that are all dependent on economics. Economics is also important if you want to be an investor. We're seeing this more and more now. More and more people are investing on their own, investing in like the stock market, for instance. Um, Economics is the key concept behind investing in the stock market. Um, Investing in the stock market or investing in other things, Even like you can invest in a business, you can invest in your local business. Investors use their money using economics, using different tools in economics to understand whether or not it's smart to buy a part or buy a successful company or to buy a company. Over time, investing money can make your money grow much faster than just saving it. So, investing is a powerful, powerful tool that requires an understanding of economics. And finally, um, economics is important for leadership, for becoming a leader. All the big leaders in the world have a good understanding of economics, whether it be at a bank, it could even like non-finance related or investing related companies, even at like a grocery store, even at a mining company. The leaders all understand economics because they have to decide, how do I set prices? How do I decide how much to pay people? How do I decide all this? And even if you want to work in the government, if you want to be president, prime minister, even if you don't want to be president, prime minister, even if you want to help manage a country's finances, manage their money, you need a good understanding of economics to do that. Um, because making these decisions will making these economic decisions will not only help the country become stronger and richer, but also just give people a clear understanding of what it is that they're doing and what it is that they need to work on. I'm just gonna go into the final two slides.
Yeah. So like we said earlier, you're using economics in everyday scenarios and basically every part of your life. Every time you make a decision that has to do with resources or money, you're making an economic decision. So you're effectively you're an economist for yourself already. And every time you make a choice, you're practicing that skill. And someday you have the ability to be in finance or in economics and even a big entrepreneur using these skills. So to wrap it up and review the big ideas from today, the first big idea was scarcity. It's that there isn't enough resources and money and time for everyone and everything that we want. And so because we don't have enough for everything, we all we have to make choices and choose between things. And when we choose one thing instead of another thing, the thing that we don't end up choosing, that's part of the opportunity cost of choosing the first. So in the juice and football scenario, if we choose juice over the football, then the football would be the opportunity cost because it's what we could not get by getting the other item, juice. And finally, what is economics? So economics is a story of how people, businesses, and countries make choices to deal with this scarcity problem.
I
Yeah,
think
so
there's a video at the end if you want to click on it. If not, no problem on it too.
I don't think it works. Let me check. Oh, here it is. All right. Before we watch the video, does anyone have any questions? It can be about anything. I mean, any other concepts we covered, or really basic questions like about what economics is, if you want us to explain again. All right. If not, we're just gonna finish it off by watching a quick video on what economics is. Um, all right. Yeah, so that was the video. How do I remove it?
I'll see.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone have any questions about the video? Like any of the concepts within? All right.
Any question? Yeah, who has a question?
Yeah.
Is that what is the meaning of what? DDP. JDP. Okay, come and ask.
That research is the full meaning of GDP.
Oh, GDP?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We'll go back to that part. Let me find this. Okay, yeah. GDP. GDP, like the actual thing it stands for, it's gross domestic product, but that doesn't really matter for this lesson. The main thing you need to understand with GDP is basically how much money does how much stuff does a country produce and what is it valued at? That's basically it. It's how much money a country creates in 1 year. So when we say Ghana has a GDP of $83 billion, that basically means Ghana in total, every single person in Ghana, every factory in Ghana, every farmer in Ghana, all in total produces $83 billion in 1 year. That's what it means. So, for example, you know, maybe the US, I don't remember the exact GDP, but maybe they produce like $3 trillion in 1 year. Or maybe a smaller country like Portugal, they might have a GDP of like $40 billion. So usually the bigger the country, the higher the GDP, because it usually means you have more people, you have more factories, you have more farms, you're producing more stuff. So basically, the more stuff we produce, and the higher value that stuff is, the higher GDP is. So if you mainly produce, like, fruits and vegetables, compared to a country who maybe produces less, but produces like, is mainly mining, like gold or silver, then they're probably going to have a higher GDP because what they're producing is of higher value. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, yeah, Jabin, uh, I don't think, does anyone else have any other questions? Like, I guess last call. All right, if not,
Do you understand everything? Hello? Do you understand everything? Right? So we ask you people questions, right? Hmm? You are ready for questions? Yes. Okay. Right? Ebushapo. Yeah. Hello.
yep.
So they say they understand. So if you have question for them,
Um, I mean, we don't really have any specific questions. It's really just these are the main concepts, and you know, these are these are just things that we're kind of talking about and the important parts of the lecture of the lesson. So, yeah, we don't really have any questions on our side.
Yeah, if nobody has a question, yeah, thank you so much, Anj, Jimmy, and Kai for doing the lesson today. Yeah, I hope everyone was able to learn something about economics, um, possibly intrigued some of you to maybe pursue your career path towards economics, and yeah, always, I think now is the last time for you guys to ask them any questions. I think if nobody has a question, then that's also fine. But I'll wait a little bit.
Okay, so nobody has question, right? Yeah, Jabin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, nobody has question. I hope they understand as they did.
Okay. Yeah. I think what I'm going to do now is, um, I am going to pretty much wrap up this topic. And I'm probably going to share my own slides. So I think for Ansh, Jimmy, and Kai, I think um you guys can be finished for today. Feel free to you can feel free to leave the meeting because I'm just going to go over the next topic that we're going to cover. So yeah, thank you again for you guys for presenting. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jabin. And great talking to you guys. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope you learned a lot. You can always ask if you have any more questions, obviously later on. You can tell Jabin and then he can send us a message. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you. Bye.
All right, see you guys.
Okay, yeah, I think um I'm probably going to review one last time of the topics that they covered. So here. Okay. So can everyone see my slides? Okay. Okay. So yeah, this is going to be a big sort of review of economics, what they talked about. So can anyone read the definition that is on the slide? So what is economics? Um, can someone read this sentence, please? This sentence.
He cannot hear.
Economics is about how people use limited resources like time. Economics is about how people use limited resources like time, money, land to meet their needs and wants.
Yes, that is right. Yeah, so economics, basically in a general sense, is how people use resources. Like you all have time. We all have maybe money and land. So all three things that we have, it's about how we use these resources to meet our needs and wants. Okay, so we have some examples down at the bottom here. So it's when you go to a market, when you go to buy something, there are prices and you can make choices with money. So when you go to the market, you can decide what your needs and wants are. And also another example is choosing between studying and playing football. So you need to value which one of them will be better. And there will always be a opportunity cost. So who here wants to study or who here wants to play football? So you have two choices. You can study or play football. And I know most of you guys would like to play football, right? So if you pick play football, then you are giving up on studying. So you are using time, your resources, your limited resource is time. So you're using time to play football rather than studying. So there will always be a gain and a loss. You will gain experience in football by playing football, and you will maybe um, lose your time studying so that you might not finish your homework or you might not have more knowledge on that topic. So you're giving up something to do another thing. And we will cover that in just a little bit. And there are also farming and weather can affect resource and production. And we'll also talk about Ghana's exports, like cocoa, gold, and oil, and that affects the GDP. And they've already defined the GDP to be the gross domestic product. So that is how much money that all the companies make in Ghana in a single year. So here are two main topics of economics. There is microeconomics and macroeconomics. Micro means small, macro means large. So microeconomics is in a smaller scale. So it is the study of economic behavior of an individual, of a single person, or a group, maybe a small community, and maybe a company too. But macroeconomics, on the other hand, is the study of economic behavior of a state, so much larger, or even a nation or global level. So this is talking about the big things, and this is talking about the smaller things. Here is the difference. And here are just some different topics that are covered in macro versus microeconomics. So in microeconomics, you are concerned about market, the effect of prices of goods, consumer behavior, supplies. But on the macro, the bigger scale, you're more concerned about GDP, inflation, employment, aggregate demand, and the capacity of economics. And here again are some of the topics that are covered in microeconomics. So things like demand and supply analysis, production and cost analysis, pricing strategies, elasticity of demand, market structure, profit maximization. Those are the things that you want to maybe manage at a company at a smaller scale. So it's microeconomics. You want to manage these things as a company. So one of the things, again, that you have to manage was supply, which is the availability of a product, supply, and the desire for it, which is called demand, to interact, to set its price and production levels. So again, demand is how much product there is. So how much there is, and that's supply, and the desire for it is the demand. So here's supply versus demand. So here you can see the general trend. So as the price falls, the demand usually falls down. and the supply rises. And actually, the price falls is the direct consequence of the demand falling and supply rising. Since you have a lot of things, these are all products that nobody wants to buy. If no one wants to buy this product, the supply will rise because the factories will keep producing them, but nobody wants to buy them. So there will be a rise in supply, and the demand, of course, has fallen down. But as we go to this other end, where demand rises and supply falls. So if everyone wants to buy this something, this one ball, let's call it the red ball. If everyone wants this red ball, of course, the demand rises, everyone wants to buy it. But then the supply, the amount of product that it has falls because a lot of people want this object. So that is the relation between demand and supply. And as a consequence, when demand rises, the price also rises. Since everyone wants this object, the price will rise. So let's look at this curve, this graph. So this is a supply and demand curve. So you can see two different lines, the red and the blue line. And you can see if there is a lot of supply up here, a lot of supply, then this red part, which is the quantity, increases, the quantity supplied increases. So there is a lot of supply, but then the quantity demand is lower on the left side. So this is telling us that if there is a lot of supply, then the quantity increases, but then the demand is decreasing and the price also goes down. So the company wants to make this equilibrium where there is a balance here in the middle of supply and demand. But let's look at another case on the right of a excess demand or a shortage of supply. It's when there is barely any supply. So the demand here in the blue rises, the demand rises, but the quantity decreases here. And therefore, the price, general price, will go up. Here, the price will go down. I'm moving on to the next topic. It's about producers versus consumers. So to give a general idea, producers make goods or provide services, and consumers are the ones to use them. So all of us are consumers. We are all consumers. But we can also become producers in the future. So producers make things and consumers buy things. And it's directly concerned about goods and services. So I said producers make goods and services. So goods are the things that we can touch, that we can physically touch, like bread, books, and clothes. And services are work people um, to do offers for others. So things like teaching, farming, and doing haircuts, all of those are services. And both of them can be offered by producers. So producers make goods or provide services. And here is where the opportunity cost, this term comes in. So opportunity cost is what you give up when you choose one thing instead of another. Like we've talked about before, if you spend your time playing football, the opportunity cost is the homework or the rest that you miss. So you have limited amount of time, this much time, and you're spending this much of your time to play football. This much. Then how much time do you have left? You only have this much time left, right? You have already used up this much of your time playing football. When you could have maybe studied, could have done homework, but you spent maybe time playing football. So this time is a loss. The cost is the homework that you weren't able to do. And the opportunity cost is the homework in this case, because you have used up your time to play football instead of doing your homework. And here I'm talking about the concept of scarcity. So while we're still on the topic of supply and demand, like we talked about, scarcity is when supply of a resource cannot meet the demand. So resources are limited. We have limited resources, but our wants are unlimited. So because of scarcity, people must make choices. So you must make choices to buy because there are limited supplies in the world. Now let's turn our gear maybe to talk a little bit about macroeconomics. And macroeconomics is a study of the whole country's economics. So in a very large scale, it looks at jobs, prices, trade, money, and how the country grows. So these are topics in macroeconomics. And I know a lot of you guys were interested in this term GDP. It's the gross domestic product. That's just the name of it. And GDP is the total value of goods and services a country produces in one year. It basically shows how big and strong a country's economy is. So if Ghana produces more, cocoa, gold, and other services, like maybe tourism, its GDP grows. So it's about how much you sell goods and services as a country. And the more you do it, the GDP rises. So, but the consequence of that is that there is this topic called inflation. So inflation means prices of goods and services go up over time. So if a bread costs, let's say, 5 cedis last year, a loaf of bread costs 5 cedis last year, and now it costs 6 cedis instead of 5. And since there is a rise of 1 cedis, this is a inflation. So a little inflation is normal, but too much makes life very expensive. So here in this case, it was a 20% increase of inflation, 20% of inflation. But let's here look at this article about inflation in Ghana. So there has been an inflation in Ghana. So here it's talking about Ghana's consumer inflation fell to 11.5% in August of 2025. And food inflation, cooled down to 14.8% in August from a 15.1% a month earlier. So it's talking generally about the decrease of inflation in Ghana. So can everyone see this chart right here? So this is basically the percent of inflation, maybe from the base price that it was originally produced. So from 2018, it goes down a little bit. It's kind of steady until it reaches here. And you see up until 2022, there has been a very much increase in inflation. So people are from 2022 to 2023 are paying a lot of money to buy the same things that they used to buy with this much money inflation. So there has been a lot of increase in price. But then again, now currently it's starting to decrease a little bit at our current rate. So this is what Ghana's inflation actually looks like. So you are living through it. So you are living through this inflation. So if you see maybe an increase in price, when you go right ahead to buy like a packet of water, maybe let's say you buy a water bottle, but you may see an increase in price from last time. So you might ask, why did the price increase? And that is because of inflation and of how monies are revolved around in the country. So that is the topic of inflation. And shortly, we can talk about employment too. So employment is the number of people who have jobs. That is the definition. And unemployment is the number of people who want jobs but cannot find one. Meaning not the opposite. So a healthy economy gives more people good jobs so families can earn income. So it's really important to balance employment too. And employment will actually overall increase the GDP of a country. And that is beneficial. It's healthy for the economy as a whole. So that is employment. And I have just 2 more slides. Here is the interest rate. So if you're curious about that, the interest rate is the cost of borrowing money. Just another topic. It's the reward for saving money as well. So if you save money in the bank, if you put your money in the bank pays you interest for keeping your money in there. So if you borrow money from the bank, on the other hand, you must pay back more than you borrowed. And this is called the interest. So let's say you borrowed three, just three bills. And then once after 1 month, you borrowed three bills, but now you have to pay back four because of interest rate. So last time you borrowed three, but as more time passes, the more you have to pay back. So that is called interest. Or if you save money, they might pay you more for keeping your money in there. And here we're talking about some trade. Trade is also very important from country to country. So it's how a country buys and sells goods with other countries. For Ghana, mainly they're trading cocoa, gold, and oil. All of these are harvested in Ghana and are traded with the rest of the world. And that also helps the economy balance. And finally, one last thing I wanted to talk about is the role of the government. So they are the ones who collect taxes, provide public services, and since the government uses these tax money to provide schools, hospitals, and pay police officers, things like that. The government also builds infrastructure. It builds roads, bridges, and all the electricity that you may see near your village. And also trading with other countries, the government is involved with that. And finally, controlling the economy by controlling prices, supporting farmers, or creating different jobs. So, yeah, I know this was a very long, a lot of things were covered in a short period of time. But does anyone have any question about this slide, the final, just anything about economics before we end for today?
Any question so far? When you understand what this is, right? All right. Yeah, yeah, baby.
Mhm.
Yeah. Microeconomics. Okay, JB, somebody said, can you break up on the microeconomics for him?
Microeconomics, okay. So
Yes, sir.
let me go back to this slide. So microeconomics is the study of economic behavior of a individual person. So it's a small scale. So it's a person or a group or a company. So in microeconomics, we have things like market on the left side, effect of prices of goods, labor market, consumer behavior, and the supply of good. And here, I think the first part that we talked about was microeconomics as a whole. So all these demand and supply is applied in microeconomic scale too. So it's how supply and demand determines prices is what microeconomics is as a whole. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Microeconomics deals with basically demand and supply, which is based on our needs and wants that also determine prices for us individuals. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah. Yeah,
Are
any
you okay now?
yeah.
Any other? Nanipa na nana. Nipa sae. Nipa siya ng kafe. Nanipa na kafe. All right. Okay, so I think that is okay. That is all for now.
Okay, yeah. I think next, if you don't have any questions, um, I think we will meet next week. But do you have any topics that you want to learn next week? Or maybe I can decide for you, but
Oh, hey. Close your mouth. Okay, so next week, what do you have?
oh, I have kinetic and potential energy, but um I can change the topic to something else, something that they like. So
Acid base and salt. Okay, Jamin, I think they are requesting for if you can treat with them acid, base, and salt.
oh sorry, can you repeat that please?
Acid, base, and salt.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can do the yeah, acid and base and the salt and
Yes.
yeah, okay. I can do that next week then. So cover that next week.
Okay. What's again?
Yeah, that sounds good. So if you don't have any other questions for today, then I think I will see all of you next week.
All right. All right. I hope they don't have any question. Giving is place. If you don't
Okay.
have any question, then do your normal receipt.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see everyone next week. Bye, everyone. Bye.